Bonjour everyone, I'm Ariel with Urbanist, and today we are walking through one of the most iconic neighborhoods in all of Paris in France. The neighborhood on top of the hill with so many secrets, both bloody and also painted in color. Montmartre. Up here, we're walking towards Sacre Couer. Let me know where you're watching from, and let me know who's your favorite Impressionist painter, because most likely he or she painted here at some point. Hello George, hello Kay, welcome, nice to see you here. So here we are at the base of Sacre Couer, which translates into Sacred Heart. However, originally when this church was built, it was very controversial. Welcome everyone, I'm Ariel with Urbanist. Let me know where you're watching from and who's your favorite Impressionist painter. Today we're going to explore the secrets of Montmartre, specifically Sacre Couer, because when it was first built and consecrated in 1919, it was very controversial. But why was it controversial to build a church on a hilltop? Well, it's because the history that dates back into this area of Paris is a very bloody one. And this church wanted to put its holy mark on things that happened here that were really, really devastating. We're going to learn the secrets of Sacre Couer, but I hope you have your walking shoes on, because the vernacular line is way too long to go up via the little tram. We have to go via walking up the stairs. So there's also a little train you can take around. It's only €5. George, you like Degas, Manet, early Monet, and Lautrec. Owego, you're watching from Owego, Kent. Amazing, welcome, nice to see you here. Hello everyone, nice to see you here. Let me know where you're tuning in from. It's a busy, busy place, yes indeed, Brian. So feel free to share this with any friends or family. Tell them about this live stream as we walk through one of the most iconic neighborhoods in all of Paris. So where are we in Paris? Well, Montmartre was one of the very last communes to be accepted or to be annexed into Paris, proper Paris, metropolitan Paris. Today, this is mostly the northern limits of Paris at the 18th arrondissement. And also, we are right now at the base, which is the 9th arrondissement, right by the neighborhood of Pigalle. Pigalle, we might walk through it a little bit later, because that is also very iconic, but not for the same picturesque reasons as Montmartre. This one's a little bit more iconic for being the seedy area of Paris. It's not so seedy anymore, but there is some remnants of its seedy past, or its red light district past. But today, right now, at this very moment, let's go up the stairs to Sacre Couer. But why is this mountain called Montmartre? What does that mean? And what transpired here so much that the church felt it required a building to be built of God in its honor on top of this hill? Hello Brenda, nice to see you here. Hello Kay from Newcastle. You climbed to the very top. Hello Michelle. I'm glad you climbed to the very top. Sandra from Orlando, Cindy, beautiful day. It really is. Gorgeous day. There's a merry-go-round right over here. Lots of pigeons around. Lots of people from all around the world. It's packed to the brim with people today. This is probably one of the most popular tourist areas in all of Paris, alongside the Louvre and the Eiffel Tower. Hey Phil, it's good to see you too. Welcome. Nice to Nice to see you here. I'm glad you're tuning in. All right, let's make our way up. Let me show you a little bit more views also as we're walking up. Cool thing about walking is that you get to see these views on the side. It's almost like crossing the bridges in Manhattan. Oh, such beautiful buildings. So, let's go way back. Montmartre. What is that name? Well, there was no Lord Montmartre. Unlike many names in many cities, where they're always named after some high-ranking person. No, Montmartre is a combination of two words. Mont, which means hill, and Martre, which comes from martyr. This was the hill of the martyrs. But who was martyred here? And why did it leave such an impression on Parisians? Well, for the true version of the story, at least the historically provable one, Son Denis, he apparently pissed off the pagans in the main area of Paris by converting many of the pagans into Christians. The pagans did not like that at all. This was back in about 500 AD. So Son Denis was trialed by the pagans and executed. His head was cut off. He was subsequently buried right here. But that story didn't leave the impression on the Parisians to call this Montmartre, the hill of the martyrs. No. The story that's told within the Roman Catholic religion, the story that every person knows who studies Son Denis, and the study that is legendary all around Paris, even in the statues where you don't see Son Denis with his head. The story is that after he was executed by the pagans down in Paris, his body stood up, walked up, picked up his head, and carried his head, and the body walked with the decapitated head all the way up to his proper burial ground, right up to modern day Montmartre, the hill of the martyrs. And Son Denis was buried right here. Now, of course, this is legend, but this is a legend you'll see in imagery all around Paris. So look next time you are in any of the major churches in Paris and you'll see a statue of Son Denis with his head in his hands. Rather gruesome. Also, you'll see stained glass windows and murals of him, same image, with his head in his hands. However, things get a lot worse, and not just in terms of legend, in true history. Alright, for that, we'll continue it as we go all the way up to the top. Hey Lynn, you're loving my Paris series of videos. I'm so happy you're tuning in for these Paris series of videos. Hello, Cynthia, you love my shirt. Ooh, thank you. Thank you for the compliment. Linda, you love my video too. Amazing. Hello, Paul. It's 9:13 a.m. I'm glad you're tuning in this early from New York City. Welcome. So if you saw our tour of Calvary Cemetery in New York City, you might have noticed that we saw a very similar building. Well, in that particular graveyard, there is what people call Little Sacre Couer. It's a much tinier version of this one, but here we're seeing the real thing a few weeks later. Hello, Linda. Bonjour, Adrian. I'm so happy you're loving my streaming. Behind the church is the markets. There's usually entertainment around the Starbuckses. Okay, good to know, of course. You're gonna see a lot of the entertainers around. And we're starting to see the views of Paris from here. Wow. Hello, Kay. You climbed up to the very top as well. Ooh. Wow, many of you give you big thumbs up for climbing all of this. Today is about 92 degrees Fahrenheit, I think. It's one of the hotter days in August, which is rare. So it's a very good sunny weather to walk up all the way to the top of Sacre Couer. Now let's skip a little bit around history before we go to why this was built. As we're looking at it, as we're staring up at Sacre Couer, you'll notice that it's very white, it's very light in color. Well, it'll only keep on getting whiter because the way they built it all the way in 1919, it will continue getting white every time rain pours on it. It's just the construction material that they use. Oh, awesome. Thank you. Hello, George. You have to set your alarm for 5:55 to catch me in LA. Amazing. I appreciate the desire to see Paris live through my lens that I'm showing it to you. Oh yeah, you heard probably off the corner a few, seems American tourists stood right by me. Listen to that fact. So you could just imagine this getting whiter and whiter as time passes by. You'll see people up there kind of in the dome. Mark, no, she complimented me on the fact that I just said about the Sacre Couer color. Uh-oh. It's a beautiful fountain over here. A place of peace. It really is. There is a whole lot of peace. Oh my God, everyone. Oh. I mean, we've already been to Arc de Triomphe. We saw Paris at night. We saw Paris at daytime from the Pantheon. But you can't get enough of beautiful Parisian views. Here's even more. Yep, I have 2 frozen bottles of water. Let's go up through here. So, I really commend the disembodied body of Son Denis for climbing all these steps. He had a lot of strength, even though he wasn't quite ahead of it. Hey Debbie, welcome. And Ryan as well, welcome. Nice to see you here again. Ooh, it's a cool little passageway right over here. Clever idea to freeze my water. Yeah, it unfreezes very quickly, especially while walking around. Also, I'm very American in terms of my taste for water. I love it as cold as possible. So here we are. Imagine being a churchgoer and climbing these steps every day. Yeah, I can't really imagine doing that. Look, so that's what we climbed right now. Wow, this is much higher than I actually expected. I've been up here before, but I didn't realize Montmartre was actually a very tall hill. I've been to hills in cities like Athens on top of the Acropolis, or in Madrid also. It's a very hilly city, but this is much taller, especially because most of Paris is very flat. So here we can see all of Paris. This area is the second tallest area in all of Paris after the top of the Eiffel Tower. There we have Tour Montparnasse, which is the tallest skyscraper in center Paris. Actually, the tallest skyscraper in Paris, because all the skyscrapers are outside the city limits in La Défense, which we visited a few days ago. And Mark, you're right, I'm all prepared. Don't have anything very vulnerable. So yeah, Mark is right. Be aware in Paris. Even though there is no violent crimes, always be aware of your wallet or your phone in your pockets. And it's better to have a bag and put it deep into your bag and make sure the bag can't be easily cut. However, look at these views. Pretty awesome views of Paris. But they're very important military strategic point, because with these views of Paris, you can easily scout out the city and you can easily fire upon it. The first instance of Montmartre being used as a place to fire artillery goes back to 1590 with Henry IV. We talked about him and his new bridge in the Ile de la Cité. Henry IV was involved in the War of the Religions, which was the French Catholics versus the Huguenot Protestants. It was an extremely bloody war, leading to casualties of 3 million people perished, and most of the Huguenot population decimated. But Henry IV, in order to retake Paris from the Huguenots, decided to go outside the Parisian city limits at that time, which was only what we see generally in the 1 through 7th arrondissements around that area. He took a few cannons, set them up right here at Montmartre, and started firing at the Parisian walls and the Parisian city to oust all the Huguenots. The artillery wasn't that effective because by 1590 the artillery power wasn't that long range. But Henry IV nonetheless scared the Huguenots, and when he marched down with his army, he retook the city and made France again a Catholic nation. The Huguenots would continue to be persecuted for many centuries later, most of them leaving by the 1700s and the 1800s, going to countries all around the world, including Canada, England, the United States. But that was only the first time artillery was used right here in Montmartre. Because the second time the artillery was used, it was a whole lot bloodier, with a whole lot better cannons that weren't in the possession of the military. Let's go up and continue the story. I'll show you more views. Lynn, thank you for climbing up all those stairs. That's something I couldn't do anymore due to knee issues. And so without you showing it, I'll never see it. Oh, I'm so glad I can show it to you. There is accessible options with the vernacular, which is like the tram that goes up this hill. So there are a few accessible options. Luckily, I think you can take an Uber to this area at least. And my friend sold hash here in the 1990s. A good place of all the places to sell it, I can imagine. Oh, alright. Let's continue going further up. Let's go all the way to the walls, to the door of Montmartre. Is there many beggars? Yeah, there are a lot of beggars around. Beware of the beggars that have, it's usually the women with babies. They have real babies, but the thing is, when you kneel down to give them some money, they might sneak their hand. They usually are known for sneaking their hand behind your pocket and stealing your wallet. And the baby kind of is like a distraction because it's crying or it's right in their arms, so you really don't notice. And here we are, ladies and gentlemen, Sacre Couer, Sacred Heart, consecrated in 1919, built out of stone that continues to get whiter and whiter with more rain and erosion. And it's definitely worth the view. 100% worth the view. Lorraine, I'm so glad you have so many amazing views of Montmartre. It's truly a beautiful area. Look at that, Ariel. You can see all the mansard roofs from Haussmann's redesign of Paris. The few high-rises in the outer arrondissements towards the south, 13th and beyond. And wow, it's really a sprawling city. Because while New York is kind of limited by the water around it in Manhattan, here it just kind of spreads out all in the circle. Excuse-moi. So, to why this church was built. For that, we have to go back to the 1870s. 1870, to be precise. Napoleon III was in control of France. His base of power was here at Paris after moving it from Versailles, which was the base of power for King Louis the 14th, 15th, and 16th. Napoleon III actually ruled longer than his uncle, Napoleon I Bonaparte. And Napoleon III was starting to get bullied by other European powers, once again, just like his uncle. People didn't like how powerful France was, how big it was, controlling a population of, what was it around there at that time? Maybe 50 million people? So he got into a very bloody war with Prussia. However, Prussia was growing more powerful because Prussia was slowly transitioning to what we know as modern-day Germany. And Otto von Bismarck had his sights on France, and he knew that Napoleon III was weak because he had no close allies. He had to go into a war with Prussia alone. So Napoleon III persisted, attacked the Prussians, but with every single advance, the French were pushed further and further back, until Napoleon III was captured by Otto von Bismarck, and the Prussians took over Paris. Apparently the Cossacks, which were Russian soldiers hired by the Prussians, were swimming in the fountains of the Tuileries Gardens. This really upset a lot of the Parisians, but it only got worse because, as I mentioned before, in the 1850s, Paris was nearly all destroyed. What we knew as medieval Paris was completely torn down and was built from the ground up in order to make modern-day Paris with all of its beautiful mansard roofs, its uniform houses, and also all the beautiful streetlights. But what happens when you do a massive city redesign? You displace hundreds of thousands of people. And usually the people who were most displaced and who couldn't recover from being displaced were the most poor of the city. And also some of the middle class as well. Another thing was happening around that same exact time. The Industrial Revolution was growing at a rapid pace. With the Industrial Revolution, a lot of the higher classes, the people who owned all these major companies of textiles, of dairy, of railroads, etc., 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 made way more money than the people who worked for them. There was a massive income disparity, similar to what we're seeing today, actually. So, these three factors were already boiling up with the entire Parisian community. But the final factor was the Prussians. The Prussians demanded reparations, and by demanding reparations, they wanted a whole lot of money from the French government, and the only way the French government can get that money is by taxing the people. So suddenly the poor had to pay up. But the Prussians had a second demand: to take away the guns. Because the Prussians knew about French revolutions. They didn't want to risk another French revolution on their hands. Also, they didn't want to let France recover and have them become an enemy later on. So the Prussians demanded not just the French army to release their guns, but the French people. At that time, it was very normal for a majority of French citizens, at least each household, to have guns. But not only that, French citizens own cannons, and they own cannons right here in Montmartre. Cannons that were pointed at the city. The French army demanded these cannons to be given back, to be relinquished. They demanded the arms also to be relinquished from all the poorer classes and the middle classes. But they relented. They did not want to give away their guns. They did not want to pay for a war that they were not involved in. And also, they were displaced, moving into shack houses in the outer limits of Paris. So, they fought back. So as these Parisians, who were a mishmash of socialists prior to the writings of Marx, so kind of proto-socialists, some of them were even anarchists, and others were Jacobins, the party that was part of the original French Revolution, but they were more like moderate Republicans. They wanted to just change up the government to a full republic. However, the socialists wanted something different, and the anarchists wanted pure destruction. They all united to take over Paris and reinstall an entirely new government. Hello, Stephanie. Hello. Sandra, you say, is the shirt new? It is. Hello, Pascal. There are plenty of designers who go and take portraits of people. We're going to see them as well. And hello, Loretta. All right, let's... We can't walk into the church, unfortunately, because strictly no video and cameras are allowed inside Sacre Couer. Not entirely sure why, but it might tie into the end of the story. So all the Parisians united in order to make the Paris Commune. They were all called communards, anarchists, socialists, and Jacobins, who were Republicans, all uniting together to make an entirely new system of government. They held the guns, they held the cannons, and also they completely restructured the power. Also, women were involved. The early waves of feminism, first wave of feminism, feminists were actually taking over the city and also making equal female rights. Yeah, it is rather strange, Debbie. Great point. So gorgeous. So, the standoff. A group of feminists gathered up to protest against the French army that was encroaching on the city. The French army was a newly built army out of peasants from all the surrounding areas of Paris. Outside of Paris, all of the countrysides of France gathered a peasant army to conquer the city once again. However, a group of feminists who were not violent, they weren't intending to incur violence on the army, but they were really pissed off and they were holding the army back. The army panicked, and the general knew he was in a very bad place of this new peasant army. He knew that if he retreated, he would be made a fool in his army. If he pushed forward, it could lead to a lot of deaths. The women wouldn't relent. They pushed further and further forward, trying to push the army back. And he sent the order to say, kill all the women. The army, the peasant army, mostly made out of young boys who were maybe 16, 17, 18, from smaller towns, never seen any type of war, said no. None of them wanted to push forward. None of them wanted to follow through with this order of a massacre. However, the other communards learned about what this order that was being made, and they attacked violently. Killed that general and another general, and the war began. The French army pushed in. They first pushed in here through Montmartre, trying to take over the cannons. They took over the cannons of the communards. The communards retreated into the city, started building barricades. However, barricades weren't so useful. To put it into perspective, barricades are a very strong tool of the original French Revolution. Before the age of housemen, the streets were tiny, so they were able to build barricades, really strong barricades in the tiny streets. But Napoleon III was very smart. He asked housemen not just to beautify the city, not just to add more air to the city and redesign the sanitation and also the water system, but he also wanted to widen the avenues for the army to walk through. So it was a win-win situation originally for Napoleon III. But Napoleon III already fell. But the wide boulevards were there nonetheless. They tried to build barricades, but to build a barricade in a wide boulevard is really difficult, and it wasn't strong enough. So the French army pushed on through. They took these cannons and fired onto Paris. Utter war broke out. For an entire week in May of 1871, known as Bloody Week, the Parisian army was attacking its own city. The French army was attacking its own city. The Parisian new commune government was fighting back. All hell broke loose in Paris proper. The army taking arrondissement after arrondissement until they got to Père Lachaise, where there was the final stand. Père Lachaise in the opposite side of the city, which we'll visit tomorrow. The French army had no choice, or maybe they did, no one knows, but to kill every single communard, not just men, but also women and children, leading to a massacre of a few hundred communards. The overall death count, they say, was up to 10,000 people. Here being a very good portion of the bloodshed, especially with the cannons pointed directly at the communards in the city below. Paris wanted to forget this, specifically the Roman Catholic Church. So the Roman Catholic Church decided to work with the Parisian government to build Sacre Couer right where the cannons were placed during the Paris Commune, in order to kind of erase its bloody past. However, it was very controversial because by 1919, even though already 50 years have passed by, the Parisians still hoped for a change in government. They still hoped for more labor laws, for more stronger unions. And they still resonated with the Paris Commune. Despite its bloodshed, they agreed with many of the ideas that started sprouting at that time. And seeing this church built right on top of where the Paris Commune started was kind of a big insult to many of them. At least they saw it that way. The church saw it a different way. They wanted to kind of erase the bloody past of Paris, kind of sanctify this area that was filled with so much hate, so much fear, and so much bloodshed. That's why we have Sacre Couer towering above the Parisian skyline, just a smidge lower than even the Eiffel Tower. So Phil, this was March through May 1871. So pretty recent. This was just 10 years towards the end of the American Civil War. To put into perspective, New York City's the bloodiest riot that has ever happened in the U.S. was the New York City draft riots, which happened in the 1860s, and 2,000 people passed away. Here, up to 10,000 people were killed. All right, everyone, I hope you enjoyed that story. That's pretty much all the stories I have for Montmartre. But now let's walk around Montmartre and see a little bit more of the beautiful side streets. Maybe bump into a few of the people painting portraits, the restaurants, maybe a few of the houses of the famous painters like Degas and Delacroix, and also Chopin, and even Francis Truffaut. So let's see if we bump into all those places, and let me know where you're watching from, and let me know if you enjoyed the story of why Sacre Couer is on top, towering above the Parisian skyline. Hello, Marie, welcome. I wish you have a wonderful time in Paris. I really am. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous city. I'm really in love with it. Great experience traveling here. So luckily there's no haze, so we got very lucky and we're seeing a pretty clear view of the city. And George, am I going to the Paris Opera? I will find out. I'm not entirely sure. I have to see if I'm able to film in there. But maybe. Stay tuned on Monday. That will probably happen on Monday or Sunday night. I'll announce it ahead of time. Alright, let's walk around Montmartre. One more time, the church. And Cynthia, I'm so happy you enjoyed that. Otto von Bismarck later said, I think many years later, he said of the Paris Commune, referring to the Paris Commune, if the black, which meant the communists, the socialists, actually no, if the black, which meant the anarchists, and the red, which meant the communists and socialists, were ever to unite again, Europe will tremble. That never actually ended up happening, luckily I think. But Otto von Bismarck saw how the events that happened here could have led to far greater bloodshed if it would continue spreading throughout Europe. It didn't spread through at least this area of Europe, but it didn't spread to Russia many decades later through the Russian Communist Revolution. And the ideas propagated by Karl Marx, who saw what happened to Paris Commune and wrote the Communist Manifesto. No, Hannah, no video is allowed. Cameras are not even allowed inside the Sacre Couer. You might have seen people sneak in video, but I'm not going to take the chance. So no video is allowed in Sacre Couer. I'm not entirely sure why, which is rather weird. As I mentioned in my previous broadcasts, almost every church I've been to is very camera friendly, especially when it comes to Christian churches so far. So I have no idea. Yes, George, I'm aware. Chopin was a classical composer. Do you know who the Green Horsemen are? No, I don't know who were the Green Horsemen in front of Sacre Couer. That's a great question. If anyone does know, let me know. So back here, there's a row of portrait painters, all asking the tourists if they want to be painted. I'm not sure if they do, if there's a catch, because sometimes they paint you on like a very like thin piece of canvas. But the thing is, if you roll up that canvas immediately, it will all get smudged up. So they charge you like a very small fee. And at least in New York City, it's like $5 for the painting. But in order to get it covered up, you would have to pay up to $20. So the painting is never just $5, it ends up being $25. I'm not entirely sure if they do the same here. Let me know if you've had any experience with the portrait painters. This is a very beautiful church. It was also built in the Byzantine style. It's very similar to the Hagia Sophia, Saint Sophia Church in Istanbul, which I hope to show you one day because I love Istanbul. I haven't had the opportunity to go on Urbanist Live yet, but Hagia Sophia, very similar to this. All right, let's go into the streets of Montmartre. Hey, thanks for talking about the commune, says Julie. I used to live in the 19th around the corner for some of the last fighting. Oh, interesting. It's Remembering Many Songs by Yves Montand. Oh, interesting. Suddenly you don't know how high you are. We're really high. We're just a few meters short of the Eiffel Tower. This is the second highest point after the top of the Eiffel Tower in Paris, period. Okay, I have to switch to glasses.
Félicitations, vous faites bien votre travail.
So we have ice cream shops, we have lots of souvenir shops. So it's called a Chat Noir, which means the black cat. The cat, very popular reference in many stores and shops all around. Can you say tourist trap? I think so, yeah. Yeah, you can. This is definitely a tourist trap. It's a beautiful tourist trap, though. I really enjoy it in terms of its aesthetic. So Montmartre was the very last commune of Paris to be annexed into the city. So it still retains kind of that village feel. Also, due to Haussmann's restructuring of the city, as I mentioned, a lot of the lower class Parisians were moving here, including the artists. So many artists were flocking to Montmartre, first building tiny little shacks, but by the time they started restructuring Montmartre, they luckily found affordable housing. And especially after the Paris Commune by 1972, a new era of Paris took over. It was called the Belle Époque. And the Belle Époque was where Paris finally things calmed down. The artists started thriving in areas like Montmartre. And culture started becoming a big deal. Everything from the can-can dances of Moulin Rouge to the beautiful paintings of Degas, of the nightlife here, to the beautiful musical musings of Chopin. Oh, look at this beautiful tower. Whoa, gorgeous. La Chat Noir was the cabaret where Yves Bourrant entertained audiences with songs of ordinary life in the late 19th century. Oh, cool. Yep, right at the era of the Belle Époque. This is probably one of the most iconic views of Montmartre. Don't know. Typically, I don't buy souvenirs. I just don't like collecting too much stuff. I am bringing some roasted coffee from here. Typical French roasted coffee. So I love bringing like foods and sometimes confections. And I might bring myself a mug. But like a very classy French mug. Be sure to drink water. Esther, you say that's a water tower. Oh, cool. If you go to Rue Piemontesi, you'll find the Cyclops. Oh, okay. I'll keep an eye on that. That is a very good tip. Oh, I love this painting with the two chats, Chat Noir and Chat Blanc, white cat and black cats. And right here, the famous Moulin Rouge, famous for its can-can dances in the Belle Époque, in the nearby neighborhood of Pigalle. It really is, Claire. Really lovely. And continuing with the art tradition, Montmartre is filled with art galleries of both established artists and also young artists, like this one over here, actually called Young Artist Montmartre. Some of them are subsidized by the government in order to keep these art galleries running, and especially to sell new artists. And we'll point out the signs. This one doesn't have a sign, so it doesn't seem to be one of the ones subsidized by the government. But some of them have a sign referring to the art district of Montmartre. Wow, this is very picturesque. No wonder tourists flock here. So you might recognize this from two specific films. One of my favorite films of all time, Amelie. Great film. Came out about 15 years ago. It's about a young woman who seeks to improve the lives of everyone in her community here in Montmartre. And then we have a much older film from Francois Truffaut, who's one of the most iconic film directors of Paris. He made a series of films, but his most famous one being 400 Blows. It was the very first film he made. His film debut also won him various awards at Cannes. And it depicts a lot of Montmartre. Here's some street art. No worries. Beautiful street art you'll find in Paris. All around, you'll find great street art. Oh, I love this. It's Wonder Woman wearing a flower crown. It says Liberté, Égalité, Féminite. Ooh, which I think means feminine. Liberty, equality, feminine. I love that play on words. And Amelie is the best. If you spot any places we pass by that are from the film, let me know. So, despite it being very crowded, there's a lot of buses and cars that are passing through, surprisingly. Let's see what's happening here. So this is the Abbey of Montmartre. Okay, this is the church we can walk into. Oh, so cool. I love that. Very traditional Parisian music from the late 1900s. I mean, early 1900s, late 1800s. Now here we are at the Notre Dame de Montmartre. So I mentioned Son Denis, who was the man, the saint, who apparently carried his own beheaded head after being executed in center Paris and carrying it by hand all the way up to his burial spot here in Montmartre. Well, Son Denis was involved in starting the abbey over here, and this is one of the oldest congregations in Paris, along with the ranks of Saint-Germain-des-Prés. This is also one of the oldest churches, the second oldest church in all of Paris. A little bit younger than Saint-Germain-des-Prés. Let's walk inside. Let's walk in. So dating back to the 1150s, so a little bit older than Notre Dame when it was starting to be built. 1147, there we go. So 20 years older, I mean. 870th anniversary. Lauren, there were, I think, a few scenes that were filmed here. Edith Piaf lived for a while in Montmartre. She had like a secret apartment that we might pass by, where she had a very steamy affair with one of the more famous male singers in Paris at the time. So they might have filmed here, I think so. Beautiful stained glass window, very abstract. Wow. Sure, Sandra, will do. Here it is. Beautiful, beautiful crucifix. Very modern, too. Let's see if we can find a depiction of Son Denis.
Père, si tu le veux, éloigne de moi cette lampe. Cependant, que soit faite non pas ma volonté, mais la tienne.
Here he is. So, I mentioned that it's rather gruesome, but it's all around Paris, so it's hard to avoid. Here is a statue of Son Denis, the saint who carried his own head to his gravestone here in Montmartre. He was also known for having a very long beard. Here they depict it shorter, but he was known for a very, very long beard. Wow, beautiful. So, as Phil, you said, you hit the nail on the head. No pun intended. I don't want to be too headstrong with my puns today. But Son Denis, every time there's a myth, there's always a grain of truth within it. Even if it's a complete tale of 100% fiction, there's something inside that can tell something about the truth. So I don't really know where the myth came from, but no one knows. It could maybe, judging by the story, maybe it was one of his followers who actually picked up his head and carried it here. That could have been, and they just attributed that to Son Denis himself. That could be one alternative. That'd probably be the most reasonable story that happened, but no one really knows. Sometimes there are cases when someone would be beheaded, and this might sound a little bit gruesome, but the body keeps on moving. And sometimes for many seconds afterwards, sometimes 30 seconds and a minute later, it keeps on moving. It keeps going all around and convulsing sometimes. Sometimes the head keeps on blinking. So sometimes if you're watching this, especially much back in time, seeing that in person might have left a very terrible impression on those people. And if his body was still flailing about, which has happened, it does happen, they might have attributed that myth to that. And they said, maybe they might have said that that was a holy sign that his life wasn't fully taken away so quickly. But I don't really know the why the myth started. But I think with every single myth, there's always an ounce of truth. So the second oldest church in all of Paris, that's the one we just walked in. Yesterday we walked into the first oldest church, which was Saint-Germain-des-Prés. Now let's walk through this beautiful square. Oh, look at the pigeons hanging out there. Oh wow, Jim, the Pixies made a song based on Son Denis. That's interesting. Thank you for mentioning that. That is so fascinating. The line got very long all of a sudden, yeah. And with so-called truth, there's always a myth. Interesting, Sam. Yeah, I think so also as well. Myths are made from truth, and truth is extracted from myths. So lots of cafes here, outside, underneath the trees, the sun shining down. People at the brasseries, a man sleeping at the brasserie, pommes frites being served, a taxi trying to get through all these crowded people. Very, very, very visually, just like all the senses are being alit walking through here. I bet it's expensive to have a coffee. Yes, coffees here might run you up above $5. Usually €5. Usually you pay more for a coffee in these bistros because it's normal usually to just get a coffee, sit down, and the table should be yours. Sometimes in the more touristy areas they might get away with kind of trying to get you out of the table, but generally in Paris it's acceptable just buy a coffee and sit down. But when it's a better view or more crowded view, like here, Champs-Élysées, maybe the cafes that have views of the Eiffel Tower, those cost more to buy a coffee or a beer. So lots of paintings being sold here. Many restaurants date way back. This one's to the 1900s. What has been the mood of people in lineups? You've been in there. Donald? It seems okay, but yeah, the lines can here get long, especially for the very popular attractions. So either get ready to wait in lines, which I actually did not expect so much. I did not expect to wait in line as much as I did for this trip. So yeah, always make a little bit more time to wait in lines. Not here in Montmartre, there's not really big attractions here. It's mostly just walking around the area. But if you go to the Eiffel Tower, Versailles, Saint-Chapelle, be prepared for lines. And so much wood, yeah, a lot of wood. That's why it maintains that kind of village feel. It doesn't feel like Haussmann's Paris. This feels like an older Paris. A Paris that was born in the 1800s from cheaper materials. So here is a gallery. Galleries all around here. If you're selling in Montmartre, it's a very good place to sell because I assume a lot of art collectors do come to this area, along with the ranks of Meatpacking District in New York City. Super easy to get around Paris. It's an extremely walkable city. Probably one of the most This is one of the most walkable city I've ever been to. I think it's more walkable than even New York City itself. Just in terms of how things are so close to each other. Here's a pastry shop. People still smoke. Yeah, if you sit outside, be prepared to potentially encounter people smoking. More than you see in London or New York City. Lots of paintings over here. Oh, look at one. This one is beautifully lit. Pardon. Moulin Rouge here. And yeah, I've taken the metro a lot. It's really easy to take. If you have already experience with the tube in London or the subway in New York City, you'll easily get adjusted to the metro here in Paris. Yeah, very little smoking in the US. The US has pretty much abandoned smoking at this point. I think as we're seeing here, as we're strolling around, it's easy to kind of just continue seeing more things as you're strolling around. So you might, like for example, walking here to say Montmartre or the Louvre might take like an hour and a half, right? But through that hour and a half, you'll have a lot of things to see. So it doesn't feel like a full hour and a half. It feels a lot shorter than that because you're walking around and you're entertained by the city streets, all the people passing through, all the cafes, etc., etc., etc. So that's why it's super walkable. It's about the same size as the Bronx, so a little bit smaller than actually Brooklyn, a little bit smaller than Queens as well, the main city of Paris. So yeah, very walkable in that way. And yeah, you see these classic red, white, checkered tablecloths. So here we have crepes filled with pasta and burgers. Ooh, interesting. Yeah, here you do still see millennials smoking. People around my age are smoking here in Paris. It's normal. It's pretty much a European thing. You're not seeing it in Northern Europe, at least, and you're not seeing it in America. But the air is so clean here that it's barely a bother. Debbie, I've encountered very little foot fatigue. Mostly because I wear good foot pads and I take my necessary breaks. Ooh, here's a pastry shop. Let me show you how a pastry shop looks like. So unlike most of the other parts of Paris, the streets here are a lot smaller, even smaller than La Marais district, which tends to be a little bit, even that is a little bit wider. So here we have amongst the tiniest streets in Paris. We have very cozy walking experience here. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. We're just strolling around, taking our sweet time through Montmartre. Stay tuned. Later tonight, I will be doing a live video from the Seine River, in the middle of it. But don't worry, I won't be swimming. We're taking a canoe. I'll be taking the bateau bus, which is the huge ferry that passes through the Seine River. Hello, Fernando. Hello, Gwen. Denise, bakery shop looks yummy. It really does. Bakeries here are amazing. In general, almost every single bakery is better here than the majority of a general bakery, say in New York City or even in London. Just in general, they just make great baked goods here. So it's never too big of a risk to go into just a random bakery and buy yourself a croissant or a baguette. Let's walk through here. This is a beautiful street. Ooh, some live piano. Maybe, Phil, maybe. That will be about sunset, so 8 p.m. wow. This reminds me a whole lot of Old San Juan, where I visited earlier in July, if you want to see that video. Yeah, me too. This is so cool. This is beautiful here. And almost no tourists are walking through this exact street. Beautiful little cafe down there. It's called La Troubadour. Oh, look at this house covered in vines. How hot is it? I think it's about 92 degrees Fahrenheit. 92 degrees Fahrenheit. Very hot in terms of Parisian standards. When I read that the average temperature was only 74 degrees Fahrenheit, I decided to just bring myself long jeans and leave my shorts in New York City. That didn't turn out to be the best decision. Yeah, you'll see men here using tote bags. Here's the Dali Museum. Wow. I would recommend the Dali Museum. I went here when I first visited Paris, and it was a really great museum. Shows you a whole lot of Dali's process throughout the years, and his multiple mustaches that he had. So I recommend it, especially if you have the museum pass. So, ooh, interesting, Ruth. Thank you for the extra information. So Ruth says she looked up Son Denis and found this conjecture. It suggested that many have happened is that the swordman was inept and in fact only sliced up top of Denis' skull. Ooh, such a head wound might not have been instantly fatal, so Denis might have walked up the hill and further on with his skull, holding his piece of his skull. Wow, okay. Yeah, ooh. Oh, Son Denis. Son Denis. Beautiful little bar here. Wow. Oh, I love this. Very quaint, beautiful place. Here's one of the other hills here. Let's go downstairs. Yep, this is the tallest hill in all of Paris. So it's a very hilly area, including Pigalle, which is the neighborhood after Montmartre. Oh, I'm really loving this graffiti. So it says Sacre Couer Paris, but in the same type of, and it's the Sacre Couer building, but in the same type of font and style as the Disney symbol. Oh, that is amazing. People leave love locks here. Here's the view above. People are leaving love locks. Let's check out what's down here. I love the music too, yeah. Here in Paris there's some amazing buskers. And they play really interesting music that you won't hear usually in other cities. Phil, you're saying you're enjoying this so much. To have you research and relate all this history is really a special treat. Oh, I'm so happy I can give you a little extra perspective on the city. And this is only my second time in Montmartre. And I'm so utterly blown away by it. Ooh, here we have a graffiti that says "L'amour est mort," which means the love is dead. Oh, they forgot a little petit mort. Show us the menu on the walls. Sure thing. Let me show it to you from this distance over here. So in Paris, the cool thing is almost every single cafe and bistro has cocktails. And they're $8.50, so it's pretty inexpensive for a major European city. When in the US, a mojito would cost you $15. Here it only costs you about €8.50. Dollar and the euro is very close nowadays. I'll show you other menus as we pass by. Are there hotels in this area? I don't know off the top of my head, but if I were to guess, yes, there's probably a few small hotels. I do know that a lot of people stay here also in Airbnbs. You say, Debbie, that booze is sometimes cheaper than juice here. Yeah, you will encounter sometimes that a fresh juice might cost you here like €6, and a juice with some Prosecco and maybe Aperol will cost you €7. I mean, which is actually a very good deal. Okay, so I don't know my geography of the area so well off the top of my head. So I'm just going to retract back and go to the other popular streets that were above. If anyone knows this area very well, let me know if anything I should be stopping by as we're walking around. Let's go up the stairs once again. Or actually, let's go around this street because I see people down there. So I'll show you the menu of La Taverne de Montmartre. So usually in Paris, and I assume this might extend also to France overall, there's entrees, but entrees is not the same conception we have in the US, which is the main meal. Entree is more like the appetizer. Then they have the poissons or the vivans that are more of the main meal, mostly centered around meat. And then you have dessert, which is called dessert, also in French. Or you can have a cheese plate for dessert, which is very normal here. I also love the grocery stores here. They're so beautiful. They always have the fruits and vegetables outside. Wow. Motorcycles are very popular in the city. Oh wow, beautiful artwork. So most of these, since it's illegal to paint on the wall, these are stick street art where they make a sticker and then they paste it on, usually very quickly at night so no one can tell. Yeah, it's a very quick transition from crowds to silence, very quickly. Oh, look at this beautiful house. Let's go up through here. There's amazing street art in Paris. Even things that are very minimalistic, like this one. It's just an eyeball. Wow, yeah, amazing street art in Paris, all around. On par, I would say, with New York City, and also with parts in London, like Shoreditch. But the cool thing is, here there's very little graffiti. It's more street art. Very quickly here in Paris, you can get off the beaten path. Great observation, Donald. So here in Paris, you can go from one street to the other. One street packed with people, the other empty. Unlike Manhattan, where in most neighborhoods, it's almost all packed. Here, you can have a very big change of pace. And sometimes one street over has a whole lot less tourists, and the cafes are a little bit cheaper and better quality. So all the people that walk through these cobblestones of the likes of Dali, Degas, Chopin, Truffaut, and many, many others. If you know any other names of people who came here at some point, let us all know. I think we have a few photos here. Oh, here we have photos of people who used to be in the Moulin Rouge. And this is a very interesting outdoor kind of exhibition. All the posters of the Moulin Rouge with its iconic red windmill. But why was there a red windmill on top of the Moulin Rouge? The original one lasted from around 1887 to 1914, around there. So for that, you can go back to another man who walked these very streets. He wasn't Parisian, he wasn't French, he was from the Netherlands. His name was Vincent Van Gogh, and he came up these streets and painted Montmartre before all these buildings cropped up. And what he painted was a little windmill on top of the hill of Montmartre. That was how it used to look like, and the Moulin Rouge took the icon of the windmill and used it for their own huge, extravagant nightclub filled with can-can dances and very scandalous shows. Now we caviar to the famous walkers. Here we have some photos of the Moulin Rouge. And the Moulin Rouge windmill throughout the years. From 1889. Oh, there's an entire Moulin Rouge exhibition down here. Oh, cool, George. Awesome, thank you for making that post. Oh. Oh, wow. That's so cool. No, I haven't been to the show in the Moulin Rouge. What I really would like to see is an opera at the Paris Opera. I wonder if there's a way to get very inexpensive tickets. Hello, Marie Antoinette from Belgium. Welcome. And I think you're looking at the last surviving vineyard of Montmartre. Was that the one? Didn't look like it. Maybe. Oh, there should be a sign somewhere. I don't know. Ooh, what is? Let's investigate, because that is a great question. And Phantom of the Opera. Oh yeah, Phantom of the Opera is based on the Paris Opera. The private property here. I think we're going to the vineyards. So Montmartre, aside from having its beautiful windmill, was also known for making wine and providing wine to Paris. All the other vineyards in Paris are gone. The only last remaining one is a tiny little one here in Montmartre that's maintained by the Parks Department of Paris. Let's see if we can find it. But inside here is a little park. Cool thing about all of Paris is that there's little parks everywhere. Let's check it out. Are they recycled? You know what? I am not 100% sure, Helga. That's a great question. If the cobblestones are recycled. So outside of my Airbnb and the 13th arrondissement, they were making adjustments to the infrastructure below the streets. Maybe it was the electricity wires or the water pipes or something like that. But as they were kind of patching everything up, they were kind of puzzling the cobblestones back together in the same exact place they were supposed to be at. I saw them struggling a little bit because the cobblestones are not always the same exact size. They try to be, especially throughout the ages. They start changing sizes sometimes or getting cracked in half. So they were trying to puzzle them together. It looks like they just keep using the same pavers, but I'm not entirely sure. That's a great question. Oh, wow. There's a sculpture of a man stuck inside the wall. Jim, you say the vineyard is very cool to visit. Oh, interesting. I'm not sure if it's open to the public. That looks like a hotel. Yep, I think it is a hotel. Yep, you're right. It's a hotel. Hey, Gail! No worries. I hope you enjoy the replay. Still have plenty of left. We're still walking around kind of aimlessly. If you have any questions whatsoever, let me know. Don't have too much more history to talk about, but if you would like to know anything else about Paris, feel free to ask. I see a huge group of people down there. Let's investigate. Oh, wow. Such gorgeous, gorgeous architecture. So we'll get there soon. Let's see what this park is. It says it's historic. Oh, it's a park of La Legende de Son Denis. Oh, is this where he was buried? Interesting. 1935 was when the park was built. But they're talking about Saint Denis, 273. Oh, there it is. Okay, this is good. So people are playing bocce ball. And here are the Wallace Fountains. A very rich lord from England who was a Francophile. After the Paris Commune saw so many people without water that he commissioned all these different fountains. A lot of them are very elaborate. This is one of the more simpler ones. But let's grab some water. And it comes out very cold. Ooh, this is nice. This is very nice. So the original ones are always in this dark cream color. However, they started building newer ones in other colors, including Urbanist Orange. Drink water, my friends. And here's our friend Son Denis once again. Underneath the pink stone fountain. Oh, beautiful. I love the pink stonework here. Sandra, I'm so happy you're enjoying this. Thank you so much for tuning in. Oh, wow. So these predate the age of cars. Nowadays they're used to park your car or your motorcycles. But these come from the age of the horses, and these were the original horse stables. Paris, along with many of the cities back in the 1800s, had sometimes tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands, and maybe even more in certain cities, probably definitely in Paris, of horses all around. Yeah, Kathleen, similar to cities like New York, children go into school in September, so they are still out of school on summer break. So here is a statue of Yolanda Gigolo. Yolanda Gigolo. Might be mispronouncing that. Let me know who she is. I don't know her off the top of my head. The street is called after her, Place Dalida. And here's another. A lot of people here. Who is that woman? Huge star singer. Interesting. Is she Italian? I hear a whole lot of Italian all around here. It's cool. Awesome. You bump into new things every day. Things. Well, that's so sad to hear about how she passed away in 1987. Thank you for adding the extra information, Brenda. Wow, this is a very pretty street. This must be a really old house. Oh, despite looking old, it seems only to date back to 1883. It says La Commandante Henry Lachoc, History de Napoleon. Oh, he was a historian of Napoleon and his grand army. He lived right here, seems like it. And right up there, we see what Napoleon almost made his royal insignia, which was the rooster. Very close to making the rooster his royal insignia. However, roosters were deemed too much of a nuisance. He ended up making his insignia another tiny little nuisance, the little honeybee. But he made it was very close to being a rooster. Ooh, beautiful cafe here. La Maison Rose, the Rose Mansion, or the Rose. Oh, wow. This is why people are taking photos right here. And this is another historic building. It says this was a son of Suzanne Valadon, an acrobat who was the model for Degas. Oh, interesting. Also for Renoir. And a talented expressionist herself. She lived here in 1900. Oh, fascinating. So the Impressionists were not only men, there were a few women as well. Oh, that's funny. I think above the rooster it says, "When you ring, I will sing." Oh, I love that. That's really cool. So people are taking wedding photos. Oh, this seems to be a very popular lookout spot. And there is... Oh, there's a bus that goes all the way down to the train station. So here we go. Okay. Vincent Van Gogh spent a few years here in Paris, or a few months here in Paris, painting the various landscapes of Montmartre and surrounding areas, a few bars inside here. So the windmill I was referring to earlier, drawn by Van Gogh various times. And here we are. We've gone a beautiful, beautiful circle all around Montmartre. So yeah, there's soldiers for some reason. I'm not entirely sure why. However, apparently protests are going to be happening tomorrow. And Michelle, you say you have to book a trip immediately. Indeed you do. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous place. So we basically walked in a massive circle, saw a bunch of different amazing things. And we walked in the footsteps of Van Gogh, Degas, Renoir, Monet, Manet. All the beautiful artists, writers, poets, musicians that walk these very streets. And Brian, you say the Maison Rose reviews are split. I'm not surprised. That is the case in many restaurants here. It's very hard to find a restaurant that has glowing reviews in Paris. Alright everyone, thank you so much for tuning in today for this Montmartre walkthrough. We basically walked all the little main areas of Montmartre, wiggling through. Further down the direction I'm walking right now, matching with La Messine Rose down there is Pigalle, which is the area with Moulin Rouge. I'll show that in photos because it's quite a long walk. I might not have battery enough left. But stay tuned later tonight at 8 p.m. I think. I'll double check. I'll confirm in the comments. 8 p.m. I'll be doing a boat ride along the Seine River, showing you Paris towards the evening as the sun is setting, getting views of all the beautiful bridges, views of the Louvre, of the Eiffel Tower, and all the sights along the Seine River by boat. If you've ever seen the film Before Sunset, we're doing the same we're doing the same exact boat ride. So I hope you enjoy. And one more time, the views of La Messine Rose and views of the beautiful skyline. Wow, absolutely gorgeous. Even toward Montparnasse, you gotta, warm up to it, because Paris somehow makes everything beautiful. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in, for following the footsteps of all these artists, for learning the history. If you enjoyed my stories today about the Paris Commune and about Son Denis, let me know. Press that heart button and tell your friends and family about these Facebook Live tours. Because they can travel for free from the comfort of their own phone. And if you want to lend your support, you can do so by clicking Becoming a Supporter right down there. It's $5 a month. Think of it as giving me a tip for these tours, basically buying me a coffee on a monthly basis. It's about the same price as the coffee. And here are the very last remaining vineyards of Montmartre. Still making wine to this day, the only place in Paris that still produces wine. And it's subsidized by the Parisian Parks Department and taking care of nearby winemakers that are in the nearby areas around Paris. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it. Keep being awesome and always keep on exploring. A bientôt, everyone. A bientôt.